Welcome to the How to Do Your 20s podcast. I'm your host, Travis Marziani. I, like most 20-somethings, spent the first 18 years of my life working my ass off to get into a good college. I got into my dream college and spent the next few years working towards getting a good job, because that's what society said I should do. I did end up getting a good job where I was able to save up some money, but after 2 years in the corporate world, I realized I was completely unsatisfied with my life, and I didn't want to spend the next 40 years in the prison that is 9-to-5 life. So I quit my job so I could start my own online business, travel the world, and live life under my own terms. I'm not special, and I wasn't born rich, but I, like you, happen to be living in the greatest time in human history. There's an insane amount of opportunities out there, and hopefully this show will help you capitalize on some of them. Now, this isn't a fluffy, feel-good, follow your passion type of show. Instead, I try to focus on real, practical information that can help both you and me live a better life right now. So let's get started. In this episode, we're going to be talking about how you can quit your job, start an online business, and what kind of strategies for success Steve from My Wife Quit Her Job has found. And Steve, for those people that don't know, has the podcast and blog, My Wife Quit Her Job. And Steve and his wife were stuck in dead-end jobs, and they decided to take the leap into the online business world because Steve's wife got pregnant. So talk about some stress right there. So Steve, tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, so just leaving off where you just kind of left off, my wife became pregnant, and a long time ago when we kind of got engaged to be married, she told me that she was going to quit her job as soon as she became pregnant with our first child. We both have the same philosophy. We want a parent at home, take care of the kids. And it's just unfortunate because we live in an area, we live in the Silicon Valley, where the property values are just really high. And if you really want a good house in a good school district, you pretty much need two incomes. And so that's why when she told me that she was pregnant and I knew that she was going to be quitting very soon, we really needed to find a way to replace her lost income, either that or just kind of drastically cut back on our lifestyle. Not that we live really extravagantly to begin with, but we would have had to have skimped to get by in order to get that house. So that's kind of how it all started.
So question for you, and I already have my answers, but what's the benefit of working for yourself as opposed to the security and safety that comes with the corporate world? 'Cause that's scary.
You know, in our situation, we knew that we could get by if we drastically cut back with my salary. So we had nothing to lose. And the reason we wanted to start our own business is because we wanted the flexible schedule so that my wife could just do whatever she wanted, take care of her kids. When we first started out, and our first project was our e-commerce store, she actually took care of the child all day, and we only worked on the store at night. So it was very flexible in that manner. So we pretty much only worked on the business once our kid was actually in bed once we got started.
So let's get into the meat and potatoes of this. How does someone go about starting an online business? I guess what would you say if someone came to you and said, hey, I really want to do what you're doing? What's the first step that they should take?
Yeah, the first and most important step, obviously, is to figure out what you want to sell. In order to make money, you have to sell something or you have to refer someone to a sale. And so the first thing you want to find out is what your thing is. There are various ways to figure that out. In our case, we just happened to have stumbled upon our niche. When we first became engaged to get married, my wife knew she was going to cry at the wedding, and so we were looking for. She didn't want to use She didn't want to use tissues because we spent a lot of money on photography, and so we looked all over the place for handkerchiefs. Could not find any anywhere in the U.S. Ended up finding some in Asia. Imported a bunch, and then used like 2 or 3, and we sold the rest on eBay. And they sold on eBay very well. So when it came time to start our own business, we kind of got back in touch with that vendor. And so it's just a way of finding something that you want to sell, testing it on a platform like eBay or Amazon, and then once you have confidence that you can sell it, then go ahead and launch your business.
I know a lot of people struggle with finding the initial idea, and I personally tend to have like 100 ideas at once, but a lot of people come to me with the question, how do I find that initial idea? Do you have any tips on how someone could find that initial idea?
Yeah, there's a bunch of different ways to do it. So I run a class that teaches this stuff, and one of the ways, for example, is you can go on and use the Google Keyword Planner, find out what people are searching for, and then kind of look at the search results for those keywords and figure out if there's stores that are doing a good job selling that already. Another way to do it, which is kind of what we used also, is to use eBay. You can use this tool called Terapeak. Basically, Terapeak scrapes all the eBay listings and it'll tell you what's selling and what's not. You can also go on Amazon, which is the largest e-commerce play in the US. There's always a sales rank underneath each item. Kind of figure out what's selling and what's not. A whole bunch of different ways to do it. But ultimately, the best way to do it is to just get a couple of samples of something that you want to sell and go ahead and try to sell it yourself and see what works.
What have you found to be the difference between eBay and Amazon? Because I tend to think of eBay as something that you used, in the early 2000s, but it sounds like it's still a thriving e-commerce platform.
It is, and the clientele is a lot different. So we still actually use eBay today, and we find that the eBay customers tend to be like your cheaper customers. They're not willing to pay as much, but you can actually unload a lot of stuff on there. Amazon tends to be more sophisticated. People are willing to pay a lot more money due to the convenience of shopping on Amazon. And so typically, we actually charge more for the exact same product that we sell on Amazon as opposed to our online store, and people still buy.
Really? That's interesting. Do you do that because I know Amazon charges like a 20% fee? Do you do that because to kind of make up your 20% fee, or you just found?
We do, yes.
Okay.
No, we do that, to cover up the fee. That's correct. Yeah.
Very interesting. Okay, so at this point, we kind of have a niche. And would you recommend just sticking with eBay and Amazon for a while, or do you recommend as soon as you validated the product to try to get up a Shopify or something like that kind of a store?
Yeah, so there's actually a lot of different ways to validate. I just suggested eBay and Amazon as an example. You can actually throw together fan pages. You can have a sign-up list, gather emails for people who might be interested in your product. And then you have an instant audience for when it comes time for you to have something to actually sell. That being said, I always like to start out selling stuff on eBay and Amazon just to see if it's going to work before putting down all the work to launch a full-blown store. Once you have the confidence, however, and once you get some sales under your belt, I absolutely think that you need to have your own store just so that you own the property that you have that's actually doing the selling.
Gotcha. And so then once you've started the e-commerce platform itself, what methods did you have the most success as far as driving traffic to your website? Is there a couple that come to mind?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge believer in all the pay-per-click platforms. So when you only sell on Amazon and eBay, you're kind of missing out on like the Google traffic and the comparison shopping engine. So AdWords works really well. Google Shopping works really well. All the comparison shopping engines like Nextag, PriceGrabber, all those guys work really well. Bing works really well. Pinterest, Facebook, there's all the different platforms I've gotten to work to be profitable for my online store.
Have you tried, and this is a little bit more of an advanced question, but have you tried the Pinterest ads yet?
I have. I'm actually running them right now. I haven't written anything about it yet. Just because I don't have enough data to present it. But yes, I am dabbling with those. It's a very immature advertising platform. And so I'm hoping that they make some changes because right now a lot of things are very difficult to track.
Yeah, I'll share a quick story. I actually had one of my pins, it's boys dance pants, and I've had multiple people comment on there saying like, I hate you, stop advertising. And our bid's pretty low, but I guess a lot of people are getting spammed with this bid. In fact, yesterday someone cursed us out and said like, you need to stop doing this. This is a bunch of BS. So I think that the targeting is not quite where it should be because I tried to make it as specific as possible. It didn't seem to work.
That's interesting. I don't have that experience at all. But we actually run ads to content. So we're in the wedding industry. So I wrote up a couple articles telling people about fun ideas they can do for their wedding. And then in that article, we refer to a lot of our products. So I guess the product is designed to help. And so that's maybe why we haven't gotten hate mail. Just curious, what are you driving? What's your landing page look like?
It's just the product page. I mean, this is just, one example. I think my feeling was a lot of people tend to say like, oh, you're doing these ads, you're ruining this experience of Pinterest or whatever. I've had the same people say stuff to me about Google, like, oh, you're one of those people that advertise on Google, you're ruining this experience. But I'm like, the only reason that Google and Pinterest is free is because I'm paying for your experience. So like, it's kind of don't complain too much. this is why it's a
Huh.
free platform.
I've never had that happen to me ever.
Really?
It's funny.
I
Yeah,
mean,
never.
the Google was more just in random conversation. Like, I'll tell
Okay.
people, like, yeah, I use like Google Ads, and they're like, oh, I hate those. And I'm like, yeah, but just get an ad blocker or something. Anyways,
Okay.
that's another thing. A big source I've heard you talk about is Facebook. And what kind of landing page do you drive people to when you use Facebook?
So there's a couple different types of Facebook ads. So dynamic ad retargeting, which is bringing people back to your site. I always show a product page. But for regular Facebook ads, I typically drive to content, and I try to get email signups, a couple direct clicks, and then I retarget back using dynamic ad retargeting.
And have you gotten that to work pretty well for you at this point?
I have. Are you referring to that post I just posted maybe a month ago or something?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, it is profitable. It does take a little bit of maintenance because you have to rotate out your creatives, and occasionally you have to create new content as well. So it's a little higher maintenance than AdWords, for example.
And have you been spending all your time just focusing on this one business? And obviously, I know you have the My Wife Quit Her Job whole line of like info products and courses. Or have you thought about going into another e-commerce niche as well?
No, I haven't. So the reason why I started the blog and the course was because we had our physical products e-commerce store, and that was great. And I wanted to just kind of dabble in different business models. So it's just kind of my way. I like to try different things so I can just kind of experience the different business models. What's nice about the blog and the e-commerce and the course is that it's a digital product, so there's nothing physical that needs to be delivered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a problem I've had. I will say is delivering physical products. The margins for us, we actually produce all our own clothing, so the margins for us actually vary depending on how productive our employees are and things of that nature, and that's a pain because the info products are nice because you just can send it out. It's pretty good margins. And do you recommend people that are start off with products, like physical products or info products, if they could?
It just depends on what your time frame is. So it takes a long time to get an info product off its feet because you kind of have to develop a following and basically become popular. So I would say that if you want to make money sooner rather than later, probably the fastest way is to actually sell something. And physical products probably works the best that way because you can obtain them right away and then you can sell them right away. Whereas with an info product, you got to put out great content, you got to establish a following. After that, then you develop your product and start selling. So if you have a longer time frame, three years plus, then info product can work for you.
And what kind of size audience would you recommend someone have before they launch like an info product?
It really depends on what your income goals are, really. I've seen people get by with an audience as small as like 1,000 people and still do pretty well. But again, they're not making like hundreds of thousands of dollars either. They're just trying to replace their income. And with that, a smaller audience for that, it's completely doable.
Okay. I want to shift gears here a little bit and talk about the people that you've interviewed on your podcast because you have a pretty big sample set of different successful entrepreneurs. What are some things that you find that those successful entrepreneurs have in common, whether it be daily practices that they do or just like a general outlook on life?
Yeah, so I found that a lot of the people I talk to are always just willing to invest some amount of money, even though they have no idea whether something's going to work or not. They're just willing to just throw some money out there and see if something works. And I think you kind of need to have that attitude. It's similar. You asked me about pay-per-click advertising, and it's the same thing. You just got to throw some money out there, find out what sticks and what not, and then once you've found that one thing, then put all of your efforts on that. And so the majority of the entrepreneurs that I've kind of interviewed on my podcast, they're always willing to try new things, always willing to invest some time and money into something new, even though they have no expectations of a return.
Gotcha. And let me ask you personally, what is your morning routine like, your daily routine like, that you find is like help to the most productivity?
Prior to kids or after kids? Because after kids, I just try to stay alive now. I mean, I got lots of stuff. I got to shuttle them around. So I'm an early riser, however. Maybe that's something. I typically wake up naturally around 6, sometimes even earlier than that. And that's actually the only time that the house is completely quiet. And that's when I can actually get some work done or think even.
And now, with your kids, how old are your kids, by the way?
They're 7 and 5.
Okay, so they're off at school for a decent part of the day, or are you still?
They are, yes. I typically have to drop them off at around 8 a.m. and they go all the way until 5:30.
Okay. And during your day, do you structure your day in a kind of, I forget the name of the thing where you spend a certain amount of time working, a certain amount of time off, or do you just kind of go until you get bored, take a break, and then rinse and repeat?
Yeah, so Travis, I actually still work my full-time job as a microprocessor designer.
Oh, okay.
People always ask me why I'm still working. The reason is I think that the entire world is going into high tech, and so I want to keep my foot in that door. But I do work only 4 days now. I just recently dropped down to 4 days. And so if you were to ask me how I would spend my Fridays, I typically work until just a couple of hours in the morning on all the various businesses. And then in the afternoon, I actually hang out with my wife. But I found that, when I'm at home working, I'm very productive, even more so than when I'm at work for just those solid 2 to 3 hours. And then after that, once I've accomplished what I want to accomplish, usually I only want to accomplish 1 or 2 things in a given day. And after I do that, I'm done. And that way I'm always making forward progress on my businesses.
That's actually a technique I've recently tried to implement, is getting 1 or 2 major things done. And how do you go about figuring out like what those 1 or 2 major things you want to get done are?
Yeah, so I use this tool called Trello. And what I do is I just dump every possible task that I have onto that tool. And then you can just kind of drag and drop all the different tasks that you have. And then I just kind of prioritize them. And so when it comes Friday, I don't even think. I just open up Trello and I just try to pop up the top ones in that list.
Steve, I want to find out a little bit more information about the info products. And we talked a little bit about how to get started in it. What kind of niches, I guess, would you recommend someone look into for info products?
Yeah, so when it comes to info products, I strongly believe that you should create a product that you have a competency in, right? So really, it's not about looking for that niche. It's about looking into yourself, figuring out what you're good at, and whether someone else out there who is interested in what you're good at also, and then creating something around that. So that's what, when it comes to finding a niche. And then when it comes to actually creating the product, you need to kind of do a lot of surveys in the beginning and figure out what people are looking for, what they're willing to pay for. And then once you figure that out, then you have to go out and start establishing yourself as an authority in whatever content that is.
And have you looked into YouTube? I know you have a YouTube channel, but it didn't seem like you do it as much as maybe your blog or your podcast. Like, I guess, what platform would you recommend someone start with? Blog, podcast, YouTube in 2015?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. I would say that you just need to pick one and then press that one topic. So I chose to do blogging and writing. And the reason why I did that was so I could leverage the search engines. And so once you kind of start ranking, the traffic naturally comes. Of course, the same is true from YouTube as well as podcasting. I've interviewed a lot of people who have been really successful on YouTube as well. And you can say that once you have a lot of stuff on YouTube, it's a lot more personable because people can actually see your face, listen to you talk, and that sort of thing. And that actually lends to a lot of other revenue opportunities as well, such as sponsorships and that sort of thing. So I don't really have a lot of good advice in that respect. Some people are just more comfortable writing. Some people are more comfortable producing videos. Some people are more suited to radio and podcasting. So whatever you're comfortable with, choose one and just do it very well until you've established a strong audience in one of those things before you move on to a different medium.
Okay. And going back to the info product, when you found out whatever idea you want to do, how did you go about actually creating the info product itself? Like what goes into that, I guess?
Yeah, so I started that blog, mywifequitherjob.com, to just kind of document my experiences running the e-commerce store. And the reason I knew that there was demand for an info product in that realm was because I started getting all these questions on a weekly basis. My friends were contacting me, asking me how we did it and that sort of thing. And so the way I got started actually was a little bit unconventional. I had a lot of problems sitting down and actually working on the info product. And so what I did was I just one day decided to launch a webinar, and I just sent out an email to my list saying, hey, I'm starting a class. I don't have any content yet, but if you are willing to join me at a very low price, I promise that I'll put out the content. And so I started this webinar, 100 people showed up. I ended up selling like 35 courses, and I had no content, but because I had sold those courses, it kind of forced me to start developing content for the class. So that's kind of how I got started.
You know, that's another strategy I've heard a lot of entrepreneurs use, is kind of this back against the wall, like, all right, I've guaranteed people that I'm going to have this released. I have no choice but to do it. I like that. That's a great strategy.
I don't necessarily recommend it, but in this case, I felt like I needed a kick to get started. And similar to the e-commerce store, I needed that kick of my wife getting pregnant. So it just depends on your personality.
Yeah. And with your blog and your podcast, what have you found leads to, like, how have you been able to grow the traffic to that? Obviously, you talked about leveraging the search engines, but I find that a lot of times that's not enough.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends. A really good way to grow your blog is actually get your butt out there and go to conferences, start meeting other bloggers, doing collaborations, getting yourself on podcasts, being featured on other people's blogs. The only way that really happens is by kind of networking with other people. And so I would say that's probably the biggest factor outside of search. There's also Pinterest. It really depends on what your niche is. But there's some niches like the DIY space or the food space or the mommy blogging space that just generally lends itself to Pinterest as well. A lot of different ways. Some people get a lot of traffic on Facebook, just buying sponsored posts and that sort of thing. There's just a whole bunch of different strategies depending on what you want to focus on.
Cool. Lots of great answers. So last major question for you. What is your number one advice for people in their 20s?
Yeah, so if you're in your 20s and let's say you don't have a whole lot of money, because I remember I didn't have a whole lot of money in my 20s, I would advise that you just put yourself out there. Just start developing some content. If you're a writer, just start a blog and just start writing about stuff. If you like doing videos and that sort of thing, just go on YouTube, start producing one YouTube video a week about whatever topic that comes to your head randomly. It doesn't really matter. Like if you look at some of these YouTube stars out there, they just talk about their lives. And some of these people have millions of subscribers and they make a lot of money now. If you like podcasting, just put something out there. The key is to start developing a following right now. Start gathering email addresses, no matter what the topic that you have. It doesn't even have to be something lucrative. You might not have plans to create a business around in the beginning. Get yourself out there, start becoming popular, and then everything will come into place once you are ready to actually start your own business.
That's a great answer. That's something actually I tell people all the time, is like, just put a little bit of something out there. It's not as hard as you probably want to make it out to be. So where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, and so I run a blog at mywifequitherjob.com. If you're interested in starting your own e-commerce store and you're interested in learning how to do that, you can go to profitableonlinestore.com. If you're getting married and you need some handkerchiefs, you can go check out my online store at bumblebeelinens.com. And I also run a podcast. If you just go on iTunes and look for the My Wife Quit Her Job podcast, you can find me there as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve, so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Travis.
Hey, guys. I hope you enjoyed that video. And if you did, make sure you hit the big red subscribe button down below. You can also check me out on Facebook and on Twitter. And I release a new video every Monday, and by hitting that subscribe button, you'll get those new videos every Monday. And this is really a podcast. It's also a website. You can check out the website. It's howtodoyour20s.com. I'll put a link right over here as well. And what it's all about is trying to improve your life. And we specifically focus on things that people in their 20s are interested in. So make sure you like the video if you liked it. Subscribe. Like us on Facebook and Twitter, whatever. But I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you again on another video.